Okay, so today I'm going to take a leaf out of a few other members' books and tell you all a little bit on how Visual Insight Design came to be and how I came to be one half of Visual Insight Design. I was born in Sans Souci in Sydney and I grew up there, and I have to confess I was a pretty wild child as a teenager. If you could imagine black spiky hair, big dark eyeliner, high top Doc Martens. I used to climb out of the bedroom window and sneak off with my neighbour to see live bands at night. All through my teenage years, I wanted to be a fashion designer. That was what I wanted to do. I used to spend many hours designing clothes, sewing them up and then selling them at Paddington markets. However, I left school in year 10. I was too young to do fashion at TAFE because in those days you had to be 16 in the year that you joined, and I wasn't 16 till the January. So I joined the Commonwealth Bank and became a teller and thought I will go and do TAFE the following year. 12 months down the track, I didn't want to stop working. I liked the money, so I decided to enrol in TAFE and do it part-time. So I'm actually a qualified pattern maker. I did my Cert 3. I found it really hard to get a job in the fashion industry, no experience. So what I did was I would work voluntary in my holidays. And I found that I just really didn't like the people. They were really stuck up and full of their own self-importance. So I decided to change tack and try a different way of getting into the fashion industry. And I found myself at a job interview as the receptionist for the director's offices of David Jones Australia. I thought this would be great. I'll get in there, they'll love me, I'll become a fashion buyer. So anyway, about 6 months down the track as this receptionist, I got headhunted by the director of design and advertising, Bob Renfrey. So I was whisked up to the 8th floor and became Bob's personal assistant, and I found my calling. David Jones, in those days, all of the advertising was done in-house. So we had a still life photographer, we had a fashion photographer, we had stylists, we had graphic artists. And as Bob's assistant, I had my finger in all of those pies. And it was the days of opulence and long lunches, and I had a ball. I loved it. I was with Bob for 6 years, and then during that time, I met Mark, fell in love, and my parents had retired and moved up to Tanilba Bay. We were living at Randwick at the time, and we knew we'd never be able to afford to buy a house in eastern suburbs. So we headed up north for a sea change. Once I arrived up here, I got a job as a production manager for Carson Publications. At that stage, it was owned by Don Carson, and Carson Publications was responsible for basically every visitor's guide from the Central Coast up to Coffs Harbour and out as far as Gunnedah, and we did them all, everywhere in between. Carson Publications worked very closely with a company called Curzon Creative Services, which was owned by Don's son, Greg, and the two companies were in the same building and we worked side by side. Sadly, Don contracted cancer and ended up selling the business, and I didn't really like the new owner. So I decided to leave, and when Greg got wind of the fact that I was going to leave, he offered me a job as production manager of Curzon Creative Services, which is a graphic arts studio. This was perfect. It was a job share role at the time, and Mark and I had Daniel, so I was able to stay at home 2 days a week with him and then farm him out to childcare for the other 3 days while I was at work. So that was in 2001 that I jumped ship and joined Curzon Creative Services, and that's where I met Kath. She joined in 2004 as a graphic artist, and she was also from the Shire. So the two of us became really good mates, even though I'm about 15 years older than her. But everyone knows who's not a Novocastrian that they give you heaps. Like, it doesn't matter how long I live here, I'm never going to be a Novocastrian. So Kath and I were the two outsiders, the two chicks from the Shire in a room full of Novocastrians. So that went on swimmingly until 2009 when Greg walked in one day and said to us, Curzon's no more. I've gone belly up. And we all got the shock of our lives. We didn't see it coming. We knew, you know, this was a great, thriving business. It had 3 full-time graphic artists and another girl and myself sharing the production manager's role and doing graphic arts when there was too much workload. So we weren't sure what we were going to do. So Kath and I looked at each other and said, what are we going to do? And we decided to purchase our Macs from the liquidators. So we did that on the Friday afternoon. We took them home, drank several bottles of red wine, and Visual Insight was born on that weekend. So Monday morning, we went out to our prospective homes, plugged in our Macs, rang the clients that we used to deal with. We didn't steal any clients. These were only clients that we dealt with, and we had Greg's blessing to approach them. And Visual Insight was born. So that was over 7.5 years now. So it's been great for us because we've been able to work from our home offices. We get together all the time. We've raised our kids, and Kath's still raising hers. So it's worked out perfectly. And we're building the business as we go along. So what I'm going to do now, how am I going for time?
Yeah, you've got 3.5 minutes.
Okay. So now what I want you to do is show you a bit of a case study. And I'm going to use my dear friend Leslie for this. Just to show you sort of how important it is reading people's minds. So Leslie came to me and she said, Linda, this was the brief. We needed a postcard flyer that had a dual purpose. It had to send out to all their past customers as a reminder that the annual pest inspection is due. She also wanted to get some printed so that the boys had these postcards in them, and when they went and did a service or a spray, they could pop them in the letterbox either side. So this is what Leslie had in her mind. Why won't it change?
Doesn't want to embarrass. No, you've got to move it down.
Down? Oh. Oh, okay.
Oh, you graphic artist,
So
Leslie.
Leslie gave me this. Do you know what? This is fantastic. I love clients who are not afraid to do this because it helps me read their minds. What I have to do is read people's minds and find out what they want. So Leslie wanted to show that termites were eating one house and that these people that live 2 doors down, they could travel that far. Obviously, there wasn't a budget to send Mark out to take beautiful photos of 3 houses. Obviously, there wasn't a budget to send it out and have beautiful illustrations made. So in this instance, we reverted to stock photography. And this is what we came up with. So there you go. So that is our interpretation of what Leslie was trying to see. And you'll see with this, the stock photography, we're able to manipulate them to make them their own anyway. So as you can see, the call to action is that it's urgent, they need to act. It shows people where the termites are and that they've made the little trail to the house 2 doors down, and that could be that person. And the call to action is Pest Solutions. So I hope that kind of demonstrates how you go from this to this, and that's what we do. So I guess for us, this what I would really want to demonstrate is how you may not have a great idea like Leslie did, but she could scribble something down. You may not know what you want, but I'll sit down with you, get a brief, and try and get inside your head and give you what you're after. So, how long have I got? 1 minute? Questions? So, any questions? No? No one ever has any questions for me. All right, so, okay.
Do you go out to a copywriter?
Sometimes I do. It just depends on what the person wants. I'll do a bit of copywriting myself. If they can give me notes, I can normally put it into sentence form, dot point form, lots of adjectives, lots of verbs, to give them what they want. But sometimes it depends on whether they want a long spiel. Then I will definitely use a copywriter.
With the urgent and the red, if you've got different types of messages, do you use different colours and different text to alert people?
Yes, you do. Obviously, red is a call to action colour, hence the reason why the red. And we could have easily made the roofs red as well, but then what you don't get is you don't get that contrast, and it draws the attention away from the roofs and not up to the urgent. So that's we do use colours for that a lot. Okay, that's it. Great, thanks.